Hey everyone, Caleb here, and today I want to talk about my opinion on Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Now, Thousand Year Door was the only game I hadn't played yet up to this point, so I was excited when it got remade because now I could actually play like a newer version of the game. I do have a physical copy of the original, but I hadn't gotten to it, so it was finally nice to have like a newer version to go back to. That said, I do consider myself to be a modern Paper Mario fan, or at least I do like the modern games. I don't like hate them or outright dislike them or anything like that, and I just thought it'd be interesting to make a video from the perspective of someone who likes the modern games, of what I thought about Thousand Year Door playing it for the first time. And I think you guys are probably interested in that, and I imagine most people watching this are probably going to be fans of the classic game. So here, let's just go into it. So I'm going to separate this into three parts. The first part is going to be parts that I like, the second part is going to be things that surprised me, and the third part are going to be things that were kind of annoying in the game. So the first thing that I liked is the partners. I think the partners are really good. I think they're better than the first game. I think they're more interesting, you know, and I do like their abilities. Now, some of the abilities are sort of copied from the previous game. Like, for example, Goombella. Goombella, I think, is probably the best partner. I had her out for most of the game just because if I were to encounter a new enemy, I'd like to use the Tattle ability instead of having to like switch out to her or something like that. Though, of course, her ability to attack is versatile as well, which is jumping usually works on most enemies. But otherwise, I would also, you know, switch out to Koops and also Bobbery later on in the game. Not all the partners are equal in terms of, you know, usage and stuff. I barely even used Flurry, for example, in battles at all, or really even outside of battles. And Vivian used a little bit more than that, but for the most part, it was just those three: Goombella, Koops, and Bobbery. I think those are the best ones. I think Bobbery has probably the best story out of all of them, and that's sort of something I do want to get into. Something else that I like is the story. So the story is probably the best out of the entire series. Obviously, I've played all the games, like I said. I do think this is probably has the best story. I also do like the subplots and stuff, like for example the subplot with Dupless and stuff. I thought that was cool, where you're running around, you know, as like Shadow Mario or something like that. I thought that was cool. Of course, I like the story with Bobbery, you know, giving him the letter and stuff like that. I thought that was cool. You know, the subplot with the, when you go to the Glitz Pit, I thought that was cool when you're fighting all those guys in a sort of battle arena sort of thing. And that also reminds me, this game actually has quite a bit of variety in terms of the gameplay, like per chapter. Of course, one chapter, you know, you might just be like a normal battle or something like that. You're going through and then you fight, you know, the bad guys every once in a while, and then you just fight the boss at the end, right? And the next one you might be, you know, solving a mystery or something like that, right? Talking to a bunch of NPCs. The battle in the Glitz Pit, I think, is pretty cool because there aren't any really random battles there for the most part. It's pretty much just all these stage events. You know exactly what's next. You can look on the list of like incoming fights so you can know how to prepare and stuff like that. After every fight, there's like this little interlude and stuff. You go talk around, try to solve the mystery about like, you know, what's going on in the Glitz Pit, and eventually, you know, crack that case and stuff like that and fight the boss. I think that's pretty cool, and what they did there was really nice. And in general, I think the subplots were pretty good and well thought out. Another thing that I really liked is the customization. The first game had this too, where you could level up your health, your FP, or your badge points. And badge points are cool because, of course, you can select different abilities and stuff like that. In general, I typically went with ones that had like maybe more abilities. Some stuff that I thought was kind of overpowered, like for example, I think Piercing Blow is what it was called. It only uses one badge point, and it completely negates all defense from the enemy, so I thought that was pretty overpowered. There's also one where you can jump on spiked enemies. I thought that was pretty cool. And also one where you heal gradually over time. I think those are probably some of the best badges in the game. So yeah, in case you want to like maybe go for a glass cannon thing, you can do that as well. I think though, in general, I try to be pretty balanced for the most part. I do usually want to have more health and FP. I think that, you know, surviving longer is more important than being able to do special moves. In fact, it also kind of reminded me. Let's just get into the battle system, and this is the first thing that kind of surprised me about the game, the battle system. Now, the thing is, I was kind of expecting this game to just be like a better version of Paper Mario 64. So it would just be, you know, Paper Mario 64, the complete structure of that game, and to be fair, the structure is basically identical to that game, but I was just expecting it to basically be that, but with maybe like better partners and like a better story. And to be fair, it does do that, but the battle system especially, I thought was pretty much going to be the same, but no, it's completely revamped here. I mean, this is way better, and I did just play Paper Mario 64 recently, just a couple months ago, so it was pretty interesting to look at this and see how much they actually went more in depth in terms of what you could do. So obviously, I think the action commands are actually better. I didn't like what they're like, the little flicking of the stick that you did in the first game. I thought that was stupid, but now there's like different buttons and stuff. You can press X for certain things, press ZR, stuff like that, and I think the thumbstick and stuff were well-timed and things like that. Basically, in general, I think the action commands are better. And also, there's all like the super guard and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty cool. It's risky, but of course it's better. Also, for some reason, apparently they like nerfed one of the things where it was like you can keep jumping on an enemy. It eventually becomes like a frame-perfect trick. I was never good at it in the original game, but this was definitely much harder, so I basically never used it. So I'm just like, okay, well, whenever I try to use it, it just ends up being like worse than just doing like a normal jump attack, or like equal, so it's like there was no point in even using it because it would just use up FP for no reason. So I never used that, so I would pretty much just stick to the normal attacks for the most part, or like the ones that maybe like I said, the power strike or whatever it's called with the hammer. So in general, that was pretty good, and there's also more depth as well. Also, the interaction with the crowd, I think, is cool. The first game pretty much had the same thing, but having a crowd kind of contextualizes it. It was kind of annoying slightly whenever there was, like an enemy trying to throw an item or something like that, or sometimes a shy guy will come up on stage and stuff like that, but overall, I thought it was pretty good, and there was, like, now environmental hazards you have to deal with. If you slam a hammer or something might, in the background, might fall down or whatever. You got to be aware of that. But in general, I thought it was pretty good. There's also, like, stylish moves and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. And like I said, there's just a lot more depth than there was, in the original game. Okay, and this next part, I'm gonna be honest, is fucking hilarious. So, for years, I mean literally years, every single time someone mentions like the modern games versus the classic games, why can't it be like the classic games? There was no paper gimmicks back then. It was never about paper. In fact, the first game was called Mario Story in Japan. It was never called Paper Mario. Okay, you guys need to... I don't know who started saying that, and like who kept repeating it, but it's just a blatant lie. There is absolutely paper gimmicks in this game. I don't know what these people were fucking talking about. They're just talking about how the classic Paper Mario games never had paper gimmicks. No, that's just a blatant lie. In fact, in terms of the quantity of different paper abilities that you can get, I'm pretty sure this game has the most out of all of the games. So I just thought that shit was kind of fucking hilarious, because this whole time they've been complaining about how paper gimmicks are ass. Meanwhile, this whole time the game they've been praising the most is saying it's the be-all, end-all of the series, has the most paper gimmicks out of all of them. So I just think that was kind of ironic. Now, I'll give you that the plot itself doesn't necessarily revolve around paper. I mean, the fact that the characters aren't paper doesn't really affect the story of the game like it does in the later ones, but to say that there's no paper gimmicks is just objectively incorrect. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like the paper gimmicks. Like I said, I am a modern Paper Mario fan, but you know what I mean, right? Alright, now let's get into the stuff that I thought was not so good. The items were kind of annoying. The items themselves are fine. The problem is, you can only hold 15 of them at a time, and if you're like me, you only use items when you kind of need to, and you're just going to end up having to pass up on a bunch of items because you can't carry anymore. Now, I guess this might be like a good problem to have, but I just thought it was annoying they couldn't carry more of these things. I get it, maybe it's like, oh, they didn't want you to make it, overpowered or anything, but the game's already too easy. In fact, I barely ever even used the special abilities at all with the star power, and I barely even use items, so giving me a bunch of them probably, like, fine, whatever, but it just seemed like a waste. Another thing that kind of annoyed me is the backtracking. There's a couple parts where you have to backtrack in this game, and you kind of have to walk there manually. There's like a warp zone, like with pipes and stuff you can go to, but for the most part, you're gonna be walking most places. And there's one part especially where you're on the deserted island. I forgot what it's called, and it might just be called the deserted island. Anyway, the point is, you have to go into inland to find Bobbery, right? And then Bobbery's like dying. He's like, give me some soda. So you go back to the coast to get some soda. But then Flavio's like, hey, I need something to trade for this. So you got to go back inland to get a coconut. And then you go back to the coast to give him the coconut. Then you go back to Bobbery to give him the soda. And then you go back to the coast again to get Flavio. And then you go back inland again to get the dungeon. And the thing is, that's not the last of it, because you do come back later and you have to go in again to find some damn wedding ring. So, and that's not even optional. This is required. You have to do this again and again and again. So it was just fucking annoying having to go back and forth. And this happens like multiple times throughout the game. And speaking of which, there is a part when you go back to that island where you're talking to these piantas, and this motherfucker literally is just repeating "I love you" literally 100 times. It might not be like exactly 100 times, but it's literally, it goes like one by one pretty much. It's just fucking annoying. And there's also another part later where you have to wake up this Baba, but you have to like keep jumping on him like 12 times. It's like, bro, just wake up. Like, this is just wasting my time. I think the developers thought this was gonna be like a really funny thing, but like, it's just kind of fucking stupid. Like, why do I have to keep doing this like 80 times, literally, to just progress the game? And this isn't even like an optional, like a cute little thing. No, it's required to continue in the game. Now, for the most part, these problems aren't really that bad, and I am maybe exaggerating a little bit in terms of my annoyance with them, but this one was kind of really annoying, actually, is the final sequence of the game. The final sequence of the game is fine. It just drags on for way too damn long. And the thing is, the first game had this problem too. It's not just Thousand Year Door that has this. And I absolutely hate in games when you're at the end of the game, you're clearly at the end of the game, but they just drag it out, man, for hours. Like, in my opinion, if you're at the end of the game, I'm there to be, because I already got like the items and stuff. I got all the items I want to prepare for the final boss, but the final boss doesn't come. It takes hours, literally multiple hours to get to it. What? Why? It doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, if you're at the final sequence of the game, there should be less than an hour left. All right, maybe like a little bit of time to explore or whatever, or maybe some final things you got to do, but and then you fight the boss. Nope, this shit lasts literally 3.5 hours before you can even fight the final boss once you enter the 1,000-year door. That shit is fucking annoying. I don't know about you, and maybe you know, you like the battles and stuff that's in there, that's fine. Like I said, if it's a final sequence of a game, that shit should not be longer than 1 hour. Yeah, but that stuff aside, I do think this game is pretty good, and in fact, I would probably say it has the best story and battle system in the entire series, and if those are the only things you really care about in a game like this, then I can see why a lot of people think this is the best in the series. I'm not sure that I could go that far yet. You know, like I said, recency bias aside, I kind of have to let it stew a little bit. But it is interesting, to finally see that perspective. And to see what people, what all the hype was about, and why they were so sort of ravenous about it, for lack of a better word. But for right now, I would probably say it's at least second place. Let me know what you guys think, and maybe if you guys like this video, or if you like, if this gets a lot of views or something, I might do a sequel video talking about, the 1,000-year door versus my favorite Paper Mario game, and we'll get to that. And let me just know what you guys think in the comments, and see you guys later. Peace.